he said or alluded to the love and obsession and all-consuming desire for it that leads to all kinds of evil. I mean, money's just a tool. The same is true of social media. It's not evil. It's just a tool that the world has figured out how to use, often to bad ends, but a tool nonetheless. So it's incumbent upon us parents to teach our kids how to use it for godly ends. But watch this. We can't do this if our kids don't see the least bit of negativity at all with social media, let alone what it might be doing to them personally. So, parents, here's what I want you to do. There's several steps here in this short time together that we have. Here's number one, paint the picture. One of the many hazards that comes with social media is, though it promises a great, big, expanded world, it actually shrinks our world down to a very lonely, insecure place. And because of this, when things start going sideways for our kids, they can feel like it's really just them and that they just need to double down and do social media right, and it'll begin to deliver on its promises of, tons of friends, tons of praise, tons of popularity. But social media doesn't deliver like that. It's more like actual drugs in that it delivers a dopamine hit that quickly becomes insufficient and leads to a greater commitment and response to the delivery system of social media. I mean, just to get the same low level of temporary affirmation you used to get from that first hit, or in this case, like. If you're wondering why anyone would get drawn into this rather simplistic, obvious cycle of despair, well, it's not so much what they've experienced from the social media so-called rewards. It's what appears to have eluded them as they look at everyone else's highlight reels and come to the conclusion that there is a pot of gold out there somewhere. They just don't seem to be working the rainbow as well as their friends are working it. So they're left with kind of what I call a low-grade frustration that can turn into panic and even a full-blown case of FOMO, fear of missing out. And that drives them ever deeper to the unhealthy uses of social media we see today until it is essentially a functional savior for our kids. And, well, there's only one savior, and that's Jesus. Replacing him with anyone or anything else is actually idol worship. When social media becomes the love of our life or the love of social media, it leads to, as the Apostle Paul said about money, all kinds of evil. Instead of fostering connection, social media tends to foster competition, comparison, jealousy, anxiety, a whole bunch of bad stuff. And with a side of that FOMO I talked about before. And these emotions, they lead people to do crazy things. Here's a couple examples. One woman I read about has created 150 of the same exact outfits worn by Princess Kate, but she looks nothing like the princess in them. Many women make themselves look like Barbie dolls. This is a real trend. One of them I read about has racked up 1.2 million followers looking like a Barbie doll. Another racked up 36 plastic surgeries. FOMO's real, creating lower levels of life satisfaction every time. And people with FOMO, they live in this vicious cycle of being driven to check social media more often than people that aren't struggling with missing out. And then what they do is they up the ante on whatever or whoever they perceive as being ahead of them in the make-believe race they've entered. All of which, guess what? Only increases their FOMO. And this vicious cycle continues. And before it's over, it can lead to loneliness and anger and jealousy and even suicide. We've seen massive increases in suicide, especially among young people, especially young girls, most of whom never saw it coming because no one told them that it was coming. No one painted a picture for them. FOMO, by the way, is nothing new. It might be huge, but it's not new. FOMO is what the tempter used in the garden in the early chapters of Genesis in order to get the first man and woman to doubt God or to suspect that they were missing out on something that God wanted to keep for himself, which is pretty incredible when you consider that it doesn't get any better than paradise. Yet that's how powerful the lies of FOMO can be. So paint a picture for your kids about how things really are. Not the curated, airbrushed, highlighted stuff, but really reality. And then number two, play the movie forward. In this, don't just help your kids to see where all this has led, Also help them to see where it's almost certain to lead if they don't manage social media versus letting it manage them. Play the movie forward. With the advent decades ago of the VCR, ask your grandparents. Many of them still use it probably. But with the advent of those contraptions came the ability to play the movie forward. All of a sudden, people squeamish about a sad ending could get the tension out of the way by simply fast forwarding to the end to see if their favorite character dies or something. It's like reading the last page of a book that you buy. I don't know why anyone would do it, but I've done it myself. There's infinite number of ways to do this today. In fact, I hate to admit it, but here's where I most recently did it. Watching the TV series, the wildly popular 1883, I started suspecting that one of the most lively characters, easily the main character, and most popular in the whole series, was beginning to look a bit expendable. With each episode, the illusions grew that Elsie was not going to make it. I couldn't take it. So when the last episode of the season came out, I played the thing forward to the end to see what happened. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert, coming in 5, 4, 3. I'm serious. You don't want to hear this. 2, 1. Elsie dies. What? Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. How was the series even going to make it without her? Why would they do such a thing to a main character? But here's the deal. Everything was obviously headed there. In fact, it was impossible to miss given the choices she made and the life-altering results we kept seeing. And it's the same way in real life. And it's that way for our kids if they make social media a god in their lives. That movie, that way, doesn't end well. So play it forward for them. Help them to see that sad endings for the social media obsessed are far from a fluke. They are the norm. Let them keep seeing examples until denying this truth can only be done by suspending all truth and logic. Let them keep wrestling with this in other people's lives and with other people's stories until they are willing to answer some tough questions regarding their own use of social media. And then, number 3, ask the tough questions. Ask the personal questions to your own kids. Like, where do you think this will lead for you? Or are most people, you think, living deeper, more meaningful lives because of their deeper plunge into social media? Well, okay, well then how's it going to be different for you? Or if they finally begin to put 2 and 2 together, end with this, well, do you want to get better? Do you want to get well? Do you want to manage this?